I once had a wise gardener tell me that if you've got $10 to invest in your garden, invest $9 of that in the soil and $1 in the plant, because the soil is what's going to determine the success of your plants. And there's a lot of truth in that statement. Hello, I'm Richard Parrish. I'm the County Extension Agent for Agriculture and Natural Resources in Leon County, and I want to talk a little bit about the importance of soil for a successful garden. Soil is the storehouse for all that the plant needs. The soil will contain nutrients. It contains organic matter. It contains air and water. And all of those are important for the growth and the success of plants. Soil also provides support for the roots. And if treated properly, intended to properly, soil will only improve year after year when it's properly cared for. In Leon County, we have a lot of sandy soils. We've got a few pockets of clay soils, but most of our soils are very sandy. So as gardeners, especially in Leon County, you're probably going to be dealing with a sandy soil. We do have, as I said, we do have some pockets of clay soil, and those clay soils will tend to hold that water and be very sticky, whereas with our sandy soils, that water is going to just flow or leach right through that sandy soil. We also typically have a few pockets, maybe rocky soils, but typically we've got mostly sandy soils in Leon County. Now, with our sandy soils, as I said, they don't hold a lot of water. Whenever it rains, that water will just flow or leach right on through those sandy soils. So with the sandy soil, we have to provide a lot of supplemental water for our plants. Now, we can increase the water holding capacity of our sandy soils by adding organic matter to our sandy soils. If you're one of those few in Leon County that have a clay soil, the problem with clay soils is that they hold too much water. They kind of act like a bowl, and they don't let that water seep through. They also, because they're so thick, so dense, they don't allow enough air to enter into the soil, into the root zone where that air is needed. It's a very dense, compact soil. Just like with sandy soils, you can, with our clay soils, we can improve our clay soils by also adding organic matter. That will break up that clay soil, allow water and air to move through that soil a little easier. So with our vegetables, in our vegetable gardens, we're looking for a deep, well-drained soil with adequate organic matter. Basically with our soils, we're looking for something that if you were to put it in your hand and squeeze it, take a moist soil and squeeze it, it's going to form a ball, not a hard ball, but it will form a ball. And it should crumble very, very easily when it's forced between your fingers. Many people in Leon County, because of the nature of our sandy soils, decide maybe to build a raised bed or a raised bed garden, and then they're going to bring in a better soil rather than relying on the native sandy soil. So having a raised bed and bringing in an outside soil is certainly an option for a successful vegetable garden. Regardless of what kind of soil you have, almost all garden soils can be improved by adding organic matter. Now, when I say organic matter, that is material that helps to loosen the soil or helps to improve the water holding capacity. And so it might loosen a tight clay soil. It's going to help hold water in that sandy soil. It's going to help make the soil easier to dig. It's going to add nutrients to that soil. So when we're referring to organic material or organic matter, we're looking at several different types of materials. Plant materials such as leaves and straw and grass clippings. You want to work those into your soil several months before planting to allow for decomposition. And usually whenever you apply those, you want to water them in order to help the bacteria that's in the soil begin to start breaking down that material. Manure is another form of organic matter. You want to make sure that you use composted manure and incorporate that into the soil ahead of planting. Don't use fresh manure, as it can be too hot or too rich and it can damage the plants. If you're using manure, you generally, as a rule of thumb, want to apply 30 to 40 pounds of composted manure for every 100 square feet of garden space. Another form of organic matter is compost. Compost is basically decayed plant material and organic materials. Work that into the soil prior to planting. And then green manure is another form of organic matter. With green manure, you're planting a plant crop such as either rye or oats in the fall, and then you're going to plow or spade that under in the spring after that rye or oat has had a chance to grow, and so you're basically returning that organic matter back into the soil. Now, with a green manure crop, you cannot be used if you're planting a fall garden, because you're going to be planting these in the fall so that you can turn them over in the spring. So those are some examples of organic matter that can be used to improve the soil in your garden. Well, as you are working the soil, or as you are tilling the soil, getting it ready for the garden, you want to till your soil as deeply as possible. Probably, as a rule of thumb, at least 8 to 10 inches deep. By tilling that soil, it's going to loosen the soil, and it's going to allow for deep root growth within that soil. Work the soil when it is moist, not sopping wet. By working the soil when it's too wet, it can cause that soil to become very rough and difficult to work. So work it when it's moist, not wet. And also turn that soil in the winter to prepare the soil for spring planting. Add that organic matter each year, whether this is your first year for your garden or if you've been gardening in the same location for several years. It's always a good idea to add organic matter. But whenever you add that organic matter, make sure that that organic matter is turned underneath the soil, and make sure that the material is well rotted prior to planting. And then as you prepare and get ready to till your soil or prepare your garden beds, before planting, make sure that you remove any rocks or twigs. Make sure that you rake the soil, make sure it's level in order to get ready for planting. Now you've fertilized or you've added organic matter to your soil, you've tilled your soil, you're ready for planting. You want to get ready to prepare your rows for planting. So for rows, you're probably going to just build up a row, probably about 6 to 8 inches high, and it's going to run the length of your garden. This is what you're going to plant your seeds or your transplants in. Typically, you want to keep your rows probably about 36 inches apart. That way you will have the opportunity to walk freely between your rows in order to work your garden beds. Depending upon the space, though, I said, about 36 inches between rows. A lot of that's going to depend upon the space that you have for your garden. So depending upon space, prepare those rows to allow for the space that you have. And if you're using a garden that's in the ground, you might even use a rototiller to help prepare those rows. Then, using a rake or a shovel, you can mound that soil into those raised beds that are 6 to 8, maybe even 10 inches high, and then allow that to settle or to pack in before planting. So on those raised beds, that's going to allow your plants to grow, that root growth to develop, and it's also going to allow for adequate drainage so you don't have a wet environment in your soil where your root zone is. And so that's how you're going to get your garden ready for planting. So each year, with proper soil preparation, gardening will become easier and easier and easier, and hopefully the amount of work that you put into preparing the soil will become less and less. There's a lot of resources to help you get your soil prepared. Through the Texas A&M Aggie Horticulture website, there are a variety of resources for vegetable gardening and for getting your soil prepared. On the Leon County AgriLife Extension YouTube channel, we've put together several videos on soil testing, how to take a soil test, how to interpret those results. So I would encourage you to watch those as well. So until next time, Get your soil ready. We're about to be planting here very soon. And happy gardening.